then most importantly, look for a strong, long-term, cost-effective solution and a partner that knows what you want to do, why you want to do it. The market right now, folks, is ripe with financing alternatives. So if you have a plan and you're buttoned up, and you're delivering a quality education with some track record, I'm hoping there's a funding solution out there for you. And then lastly, make sure that you allow, if your building is stable, make sure you leave some margin in your building and in your system to be flexible. You're going to need, if the four walls don't change, you're still going to need to evolve and change and grow as the market and education systems change. But that's your long term, that's your nirvana. And if we start to work backwards from that, it'll help put into perspective what you need to do and some of the challenges of the timing, if you will, and how the bridge financing product can help you control your timing to get your new building open, whatever that may look like. So let's move to the development phase. And before, likely, in most cases, I won't say all, but in a high percentage of cases, before you get to your permanent position, you're going to need some type of development and construction. And these bars are not drawn to scale. I will tell you that the development and construction phase is a big, big phase. Whether you're building something from the ground up or whether you're renovating something that exists that wasn't a school and maybe you're turning it into a school, there's going to be a large team of people that are engaged in that process. You're going to have, in addition to your board, your teachers, your students, your parents, you're going to have a team that's going to grow rapidly, because all of these people, whether they're helping you build the building or they're renovating the building or they're funding the building, developers, contractors, bankers if you're using bank financing, bond brokers, underwriters, all of those groups are going to be engaged highly in your development and your construction phase, because they want to make sure that it's done right and it's done on time. And there's a sequence. You have to do certain things beforehand. You have to prep the ground before you can actually pour the foundation. You have to make sure that there's water and utilities underneath the ground before you make it level, before you pour the foundation, before you build the 2x4s. So there's an order to this, and it's going to be, it can be complicated, and it can take time depending on the delays, the weather, all sorts of things. So keep in mind, in the development and construction phase, there's a consideration for, if you're acquiring it, is the school already, is it designed and allowed to be a school? Because if not, there's going to be significant changes that you may need to make for code reasons, and there may also be changes to the configuration of the building that you want to make. And again, as I mentioned, we've got several webinars. We'd love to talk to you about budgeting and planning and about needs versus wants, but that is a significant consideration, is the need and the want, and that balance of what your budget really looks like. And then you've got to make sure, as I said, it meets all the state, local, and federal requirements to be a school. It's got to be safe. It's got to be zoned properly. All of those, if it's zoned properly, it still may need features that are requirements. And does it have life safety? I mean, that's a given, but I want to put it up there because as you're designing and developing and constructing your building, life safety the cost of some of your life safety systems, if you're retrofitting them, can sneak up on people. And I think the other question, when it really gets to timing and it gets to how that phase can either speed up or slow down, it's will your landlord, if you're not buying your own building, whether it be through bank financing or USDA financing or a bond or something, the CDFI, if you are using a landlord, a long-term lease to control your building, will the landlord, as part of your lease, fund the renovations and the changes that you need and want in your building? That's definitely a consideration, because if they won't, so here's the first example of how to use the bridge financing. let's say your landlord will give you a long-term 20-year lease and you like the terms, but you need $1 million worth of renovations, and the landlord says, nope, not going to fund that. This bridge financing product can help you get that done in a way that you can still have that long-term home. And it's just another, it's one of the examples that can come at you from the idea to the doors open on your Nirvana building, that the bridge financing product is something that you may not control all of the work, but we can help you control the funding and the timing of it so your schedule stays intact. And I think that's really the key element of this, and we'll get into that in a couple pages. But the timing of when you commit to and promote and explain to your community that you're going to do something different, meeting that deadline is important. And there's a bunch of obstacles in the way that can come up and bite you. And the bridge financing is one of the solutions that helps you mitigate that risk. So again, working backwards, and I would appreciate your feedback if this resonates with you or does not. But Nirvana is your long-term facility. There's going to need to be some work done to the location to make it into your end state. The first stage of all that is what we've defined as called acquisition and pre-development. And I think the acquisition and development, the piece of this that I want to highlight for you is this is where the largest number of external forces are at work with you. In the development and construction phase, you have identified partners who want to help you. You've still got to perform certain things for and with them, but they're on your side, they're on your team. In the acquisition and development stage, you're still working in an environment where your counterparty, and that's a big word, but consider you the buyer and them the seller of the building. You're at odds. There's some tension between you and them by definition. The other piece of that, so that's one. Let me take that example right there. So in the acquisition phase, you have to acquire the building. Excuse me. You have to acquire the site and or the building that you then want to make into your permanent home. That the timing of that isn't something that you don't always control. Some ideal building may want to be is available today, but you're not ready to move on your plan right now. Maybe you plan 6 months from now. So there's timing challenges, especially in this acquisition and pre-development phase, that are going to potentially put at risk your end state of having a new campus or a new building open next, whether it's January 1st or August 1st, whatever it happens to be. This is a segment of time that you guys as leaders have probably the least amount of control over, because you're dealing with a seller that is, again, on the opposite side of the table for you. The second piece of it is what you may have heard defined as zoning or entitlements or permitting. And that is, can the location or the building or the dirt that you have, let's say, agreed to buy from a buyer or a seller, from a buyer, or the plot of land or the building that a developer is willing to develop for you. The question is do you have enough time in your timeline, and is it actually zoned and permitted to be a school? It can be available, it can be great, but if the local municipality won't approve it to be a school, or your district won't give you a certificate of occupancy to run a school there, that's a challenge. And going through that process sometimes it can be legislative and sometimes it can be administrative. In either case, it's time. And if you have a perfect building and it needs to be rezoned for a school, that can be done. But the question is when does that need to be done so you can get the development and the renovations ready to go, so you can open your building for your new school with more kids, different amenities, et cetera, et cetera. So it really comes down to in stages 1 and 2 in the acquisition and pre-development and development and construction, it really comes down to, can you or do you need to insert yourself and funding into those stages in order to keep the master timeline engaged? And that's a challenge because, as I said earlier, many different funding sources are willing to fund a building that's ready to go, that is a school, that has kids in it. The ability for you guys to finance that, the building itself, is quite easy. The ability for those same funding sources that are doing permanent money to fund all of the work and all of the pre-work at the time it needs to be is less likely. That's not their greatest and best strength. Some of them will do that, but there are opportunities for delays and timing that you will want to address if one of your funding sources won't fund that at the time. So for example, will your developer take the risk that they will go through and try to get the city to change the use of a building from a commercial building to a school building? There's risk involved in that, and they might not fund it. And if they don't fund it, then the question becomes, what happens to your desired expansion, your opening date? That's a real challenge as schools move forward, as schools move through this timeline from where they are to where they want to be. So let me pause there and talk about what happens if your nirvana gets delayed. And I suspect that many of you have thought about what happens when you're going through a facility campaign. You've planned and you've promoted and you've got everybody jazzed up, and you may even have people giving money in addition to their time and their energy. And you're saying, we're going to get this building, we're going to have this building open next year. Well, one of our schools was challenged, and through a bunch of challenges, some that they could have mitigated and some they couldn't. They did that, but they were late, and they had this group of kids that they didn't want to lose, so they ended up renting a church for 4 months. And because the building wasn't going to be ready, but they didn't want to miss the opportunity to put new kids in those chairs and change their lives. So there's a real cost if your product is delayed. There's a cost associated with it from the secondary rent if you have to pay it. The other way to fix that, if you get pinched for time and you absolutely positively want to open on, pick a date, August 1st, the other way to fix that is with overtime. You can compress your construction and your development schedule into a shorter window, and that comes at the cost of overtime. And that is, again, that's a real cost. That's a hard dollar cost if you guys miss your targeted opening. The other cost that is sometimes overlooked in what it really, really costs you and the damage that it does is the reputation damage, the lost momentum, the erosion of trust from multiple groups inside your constituency. If you guys promise something, you know that you're only as good as your word. And if you promise something and you miss it, and you promise it again and you miss it, sooner or later, even the best teacher, the most dedicated teacher that you have, has a breaking point, and you run the risk of losing their mind share and them leaving altogether, and that's going to affect your kids. And the attrition, if you've told your families and your community that you're going to go to a great new space that has I don't know, a gymnasium and a cafeteria and a playground, and none of those features are available at your current location. If you miss that opening, at some point in time, the folks who are at the current location who are waiting for those new amenities, they don't They don't stick around. They go for another alternative. And the other one is, you've got your growth plan is dependent on gathering new students from that new area. If you miss that opening, those students that wanted to go to that new location are going to have to find an alternate location, and it might not be over at your current location. So just be aware, if you will, of it costs real money sometimes, but the damage, the real money is you can find a way to make it work. It's really hard to recapture the mind share of your parents, your students, your staff if you miss those deadlines. And that's an extreme example, but we do hear from the schools regularly that they had kids on the list and the kids pulled their name from the list because they missed deadlines. And it's something that this bridge financing can help with. So we talked about some of the other things to consider in those other phases, right? I think I mentioned earlier that when you're looking for a site, make sure that you have location. You're deciding where you want to be is very unique to the kids you want to serve, the parents that support those kids, where those parents work. All of that matters. The competition around your school, both from a traditional public and a charter, matters. The traffic patterns, right? If you're a neighborhood school, that's one thing. If you're a destination school and your moms and dads have to cross a freeway and a set of railroad tracks, which we've seen schools do, the site might not be as perfect as you thought it would be, because you're going to really stress out the support system of those kids getting to and from school, and then moms and dads to work. So pay attention to all that: location. And then lastly, a little bit of hopefully exaggerated humor. Don't build your school on a toxic waste dump. We've had schools that have approached us that they wanted to build their school, which was 25 feet below grade of where a filling station used to be. And all these pollutants, we could tell that all these pollutants had leached into the soil. And it's just, that's not good. You just need to avoid that. We have a school in East LA who their neighbor is a liquor store, and they serve in a very challenged area, and some of the moms and dads accept that, and some of the parents are concerned by it, and I think there's justification on both sides. The THC, again, it's an illustration of, you might have a location that can be a school, you can have it and it can work for you, but your neighbors and the geography and the things around you do matter. So something to be aware of. And then again, in the pre-development, making sure that the zoning timelines, the permitting timelines, getting all the site work done, the water, the utilities, electrical, sewer, getting all of that stuff nailed down. If you're doing a ground up construction on unimproved land, that can really take time, and there's a cost to that. And the funding those costs is part of the project, but who funds them and when impacts how you deliver the end state to your community. So we have a couple of real life examples. I'll give you one in Portland. The school in Portland was consolidating 2 locations into one, and they found a location. It was optimal in their mind. It had previously been a school. It was a larger facility. It allowed them to consolidate 2 groups of kids under one roof, and it had more amenities than either one of their schools had individually. The leadership had planned for some attrition, but they also knew that the net growth that they were planning around there was what they wanted. So they had checked all the boxes, they'd done all the work. It was a school, it was going to continue to be a school. They found somebody that was willing to sell it, and here they go. Well, and this is a visual aid of where they were moving. 2 locations into one. the the challenge became for this school was they had the starred building under contract, and their funder backed out, and they needed our help to hold that building while they could get another funding source. And to make that more challenging, they had broken their lease on location number 2, so they couldn't stay there. Because that landlord had already re-rented the building to somebody else. So they were going to lose more than half their population, and they couldn't sustain their full operation and buy the starred building if they only had the capacity of their current location. And the starred building wasn't going to be there. They had extended that contract a couple of times. So in this case, right, timing, and this is an extreme example, but the timing of this school needing to control that starred building, their target location, their nirvana, if they didn't do that, it resulted in death. And their school was going to likely close because they couldn't sustain operations. And in this case, specifically in this case, charter school capital from, hey, nice to meet you, ooh, sounds like you have a challenge, to us funding that school so they could move in these a couple of weeks ago. It took us a little over 60 days. And I will tell you right now that I can't promise that every transaction is going to go in 60 days, but I will commit to you on behalf of the 50 plus employees that we will do whatever it takes as fast as we can to make sure you stay on track. This school, this case study, was a little bit of an anomaly in the fact that they had huge pressures fighting against them in terms of time, but they also had an awful lot of pre-work done for us. They were a really buttoned up school. They had done their diligence, and they had done all their homework for this other financing source who flaked on them. So our ability to step in quickly and understand them was very high. And so again, that is an illustration. It's a single illustration. We have other illustrations that I can share you details with, but the point is that we're committed to being flexible and making sure that we can do whatever we can with the talent and the hard work and the products and services that we have to keep you on track. And this is just one success story that we get to share. So I mentioned at the beginning that we were going to kind of deep dive on the bridge financing solution, but the other piece of it that I want to make sure that you're conceptually aware of is we do a lot more than just bridge financing. We are charter schools first, and we have an array of products from marketing to short-term capital. As I mentioned, we have a facilities program where we actually will finance your building long term. We will upgrade your facility, new systems for HVAC, roof, solar, lighting, any of those systems that are going to improve the educational environment of your school. We will fund those improvements, and then you get the benefit of the reduced operating efficiencies. Just one example of a place where we can improve your school and you guys can benefit, and it's specifically dedicated to charter schools. And then I think the last one, we have advisory services, and that is just, we've got a team of people who we call them a bunch of different things. I think the best descriptor is we call the leader of that group Mary Poppins, because she floats in, you never see her coming, and she can use tough love, or she can use a spoonful of sugar, but she has experience, and that team has experience turning around schools that are kind of wobbly and just need a little bit of guidance. And that's something that any of our clients get if you're a charter school capital client. So we're really excited about each one of your individual schools and what you're trying to do. And we want to assist when things go right. And also, life is life. We know that there's going to be some bumps and bruises, and things are going to not go according to plan. So we really want to be here for the easy times, but more importantly, we want to let you know you've got a partner when it gets bumpy. So that's the end of my prepared remarks. I'm gonna toggle over to another screen and check for questions, and I'm gonna give you guys a minute to also take a look and send me a question if you want to do that. All right, I've got several questions that have come in, and if I had more technological ability, I would make them bigger so I can read them. Let me try this. Oh, much better. It's really short. Okay, thank you all for participating. I got Jim has a couple of questions. Barbara sent one in. Aman sent two in. So let me go to this one first. Let me read this and make sure I don't share more than is appropriate. Okay, let me read this one. It's long. So this person says, we're a new first-year student, 85 kids, K through 3. We're performing under budget, but our state has frozen charter school funding this month due to the state budget impasse. Governor has vetoed budget. Legislature's on a short on override. Okay. We have payroll needs to meet November and have students fund. Okay. This is a common question that we hear at Charter School Capital. Jim, can you ping me after we can get you in touch? I'm guessing you might be in North Carolina. I'm not sure, but the short answer to Jim's question ties directly to the other services that Charter School Capital has to offer, and that is Jim's school has a short-term funding need for something that he can't control. Yes, Jim, absolutely. Depending on the state you're in, Charter School Capital can easily help you solve that problem with a tool we call working capital. And there's a team of people that are dispersed around the country that might be local to you, who can meet with you, in person and help you get to the bottom of the solution. But the short answer is your question, and our solution to it is the foundation of how Charter School Capital was founded. 12 years ago, during the budget impasse in California, Charter School Capital was started to bring funding to schools who needed help. So there we go. Thank you. Jim had to go. Thanks for your time, Jim. I had a question about audio. Can you guys hear me? I think you can. I'm going to assume you can, unless I get a note from my team saying you can't. Somebody had a question about audio. Sorry about that, folks. Will we receive the PowerPoint? Yes, I mentioned early, and I'll mention again, you guys will all get this PowerPoint with an amendment that has many of the details that I'm speaking to right now. So feel free, Emin, we will definitely get you this information. And for Emin's benefit, let me do this. Here is my contact information. And again, I think for the people who are seeking contact information, our website is a great resource. You can look at all of our products. You can request services. My contact information is right here. And sorry about that, folks. I'm going to go back. And I will continue to be available and get you to the right person. Contact information. Okay. Anne asked a question. How much does your funding cost? Anne, the answer to that question is specific and unique to your organization. So this is, we are not, there isn't a way to quantify the price of this for anybody. So we specifically chose not to talk about price. This is a service that we can customize to your unique situation. So a couple of other pieces of information I'll share with you in context. We have one school that's using our asset-backed or our bridge financing product for 6 months. It's a very short, very acute need, and they're going to have it outstanding for 6 months. If your school, like this, we have a school in Florida. We have a school in Florida, as I mentioned, their perfect location, they've identified it, but they also know that their ability to move into that site is about 2 to 3 years away. They actually are contemplating using our product to hold that site for 2 to 3 years so they can amass the kids and the track record and the momentum to actually expand into that site. So it really, the cost of this is very much dependent on what you want to do, your system, your time. And we have, again, dedicated people across the country who would easily be able to figure out what your system, what your proposed solution would cost. So thanks for the question, Anne. It's a good one. Let me add, I think I got a text from my team. Let me pull this open too. Yeah, I did. I got a great question. Somebody asked about pre-development and construction costs, and are they, sorry folks, I'm trying to navigate. Somebody asked about pre-development and construction, pre-development costs. Aren't they part of the total project cost? The answer is yes. So the question is, the question about are they included is a good one. The answer is yes. It really comes down to timing. Getting your survey work and getting your zoning approved is absolutely part of the total project. The question is, can you get that done, or will your developer or your landlord fund it on your schedule? And that's the real piece of it. So the school that we talked about that needed 6 months to help with us, they are, the expenses that they have incurred and are incurring now with our financing are going to be rolled into their permanent financing, and they're going to pay us back. And so that question, and I don't know who that came from, that's a great question, but it is really about timing. We can fund you now, and your bond or your bank or your long-term landlord can roll all of that into the final package. So that's a great question, and it really does give you guys back the flexibility to stay on your track. So, okay. I think those are all the questions that I had. So again, I want to thank you, all of you, for your questions. Your engagement was great. Thank you for staying with us. And please email me if you need help, or hit our website. There's a great set of resources, white papers, product sheets, webinars, testimonials. There's an immense amount of resources, and more importantly, an easy way to contact our subject matter experts that can help you with whatever you need. So please use our website, contact me, do whatever is convenient for you. But again, thank you for your time, and I appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone.